Welcome to LonelyMan BGS in this series on how to play Mage Knight. In this video, we'll be going through some of the basic information on tiles and player movement. These are the map tiles found within the game. There are three types. The first tile is the starting tile. In the middle of the tile is the magic portal where players' characters will spawn. This tile is double-sided as well. Side A shows a narrow coastline, whereas side B exhibits a wider coastline. Which side is used depends on what scenario is played. The beginning walkthrough uses side A. The second tile type is countryside. These tiles have green backs and represent the less developed portions of land within the game. Countryside tiles will be the first ones to be placed and tend to have gentler enemies and terrain. The final tile type is core. Core tiles have brown backs and represent more developed areas. These tiles have more advanced challenges and also have large cities mixed throughout. In many of the scenarios, the objective is to take down these cities through combat. This task is not so easy, and it is highly unlikely you will end up taking the cities in your first few plays of Mage Knight. In the walkthrough of the game, the first reconnaissance, the player's goal is to locate the capital of an unknown kingdom. One of these city tiles would represent the capital in that scenario. Let's go over the initial positioning using the first reconnaissance as our example. This initial positioning requires 3 tiles. In this scenario, side A of the starting tile is used. Countryside tile number 1 is used and placed to the left. As you can see, the circle will form and complete as the tiles come together. Countryside tile number 2 is also used, and it is placed to the right. Between the two circles is the star, which will also come together as long as the tiles are placed correctly. All tiles should be placed so that the landmarks are uniform in their facing. As the game is played, more map tiles are revealed. This specific map configuration is called the wedge. The wedge follows the narrow coastline. Side B allows for more open map types. The rulebook shows the other 2 map configurations, fully open and 3 or 4 wide columns. The second is the fully open map, which can contain up to 5 tiles in width. The final map type is the open map with 3 or 4 columns. As you can see, these configurations can become rather sprawling. Let's move on to movement. In order to move, players must pay a move cost. This cost is depicted on the day and night boards. The cost for movement differs between daytime and nighttime. Let's use a forest as an example. It costs 3 to move through during the day, but 5 during the night. There are some terrains that are impassable, like mountainous terrains and water. Later on, players may play specific cards to get past these impassable terrain types. In order to move, players must spend move points provided by action cards. Action cards will be talked about more in a different video. Let's say Tovak plays this March card. The base action gives him move 2. It costs 2 to move onto a plain space, so Tovak will do so. Let's do another example. This time Tovak will move onto the forested space. It's daytime, so the forest costs 3 movement. This card's base action is no longer able to satisfy the move requirement, but the powered up action gives move 4, so the required green mana will be used to gain the stronger effect of March. 3 out of the 4 total move was used to move onto the forest. Tovak could play another card to keep moving if he wished to do so. Let's perform one last example. Tovak wishes to move onto the mana mine. The plain space costs 2 movement points and the hilly space costs 3 movement. In order to pay the cost of 5 total movement points, Tovak will spend the powered up March card and the base action of stamina. This grants him 6 movement points in total. Tovak moves and he has 1 leftover movement point. Let's talk about other players. Tovak can freely pass through Goldix, but he should not end his movement on the same space, as this counts as an attack on the other player. If PvP combat is not allowed in your game, then ending your move on the same space is not allowed. If for any reason, Tovak decides not to leave the portal, or ended a turn on the portal, he would be taken off the map until the next turn. Any number of heroes can occupy the portal space at a time. Let's move on to Rampaging Enemies, of which there are 2 in this setup. Both Marauding Orcs and Draconum are considered Rampaging Enemies. Rampaging Enemies may limit player movement in 2 ways. First, players may not enter a space occupied by an undefeated Rampaging enemy. Second, moving from one space adjacent to a Rampaging enemy to another space adjacent to the same Rampaging enemy provokes the enemy to attack. This immediately ends your movement and leads to mandatory combat. If Tovak wanted to move to the village without provoking this enemy, he would have to utilize this open plain next to him, which would cost more movement, but would not provoke an attack from the adjacent unit. Our final task is exploration. When a player is standing on a spot that borders empty table space, they may reveal a new tile by spending 2 movement points. The top tile will be drawn from the tile deck and then placed with the star and circle symbols matching. Tovak is standing on a space where 2 possible tiles could be revealed, so he must announce which one he is exploring before revealing the tile. By spending another 2 movement, he could reveal both tiles. Any accessible space bordering emptiness may be used for exploration, as long as the scenario's configuration allows it. Exploration counts as movement, so the figure may continue movement afterwards, and even spend more movement cards after if they wish. In the first reconnaissance scenario, players will gain 1 fame every time a new tile is revealed. This is not true when playing with the full rule set. There are certain limitations for the placement beyond configuration constraints. Countryside tiles can only be placed such that they will be adjacent to at least 2 other tiles, or adjacent to a tile that borders at least 2 other tiles. Quartiles, on the other hand, can only be placed such that they will be adjacent to at least 2 other tiles. This quartile placement will be considered illegal. This concludes our how-to on tile and movement basics. Be sure to like and comment if you have any questions. Click the subscribe button below to see more board game content like this.